New York City, a place of bright lights on the surface, but beneath it lay a dark, powerful underworld. This was the golden age of the American Mafia, when organized crime was at its peak. And inside this shadowy world, moving silently yet effectively, was one man, Joe Valachi. Joe wasn't an ordinary street criminal. He was a full-trained, street-smart soldier of the Genovese crime family, one of the most powerful mafia families in the United States. His daily job was a 9 to 5. His tasks were things like extortion, loan sharking, racketeering, illegal gambling operations, and sometimes, when ordered murder. In the Mafia, everything ran on strict rules: loyalty, silence, and absolute obedience. These rules weren't written on paper. They lived in the air, in every conversation, every handshake, every order. Breaking these rules didn't mean punishment. It meant death. Joe followed these rules blindly. He didn't ask questions. He didn't argue. He didn't hesitate. Orders came from above, and Joe simply executed them. That was his life. That was his world. To survive in the Mafia, you didn't need courage. You needed discipline, fearlessness, and the ability to do whatever the family demanded, even if it meant crossing moral lines or hurting strangers you never even met. At this time, the Mafia wasn't just a criminal group. It was a shadow government. They controlled businesses. They controlled labor unions. They controlled money flow. And in many neighborhoods, they controlled the streets more than the actual police. Joe was a small but important cog in this giant underground machine. A bolt that kept the system running smoothly. Not a boss, not a mastermind, but a reliable soldier who knew the Mafia world better than he knew his own dreams. But beneath the toughness, beneath the silence, something was happening inside Joe. Pressure was building. Real, dangerous pressure. Every day brought more risk: police investigations, surveillance, undercover agents, rival gangs, snitches, betrayals. And inside his own Mafia family, doubts slowly began forming. The same family that provided him safety could, at any moment, turn on him and decide he was no longer useful. This fear didn't strike at once. It grew slowly, like a storm forming on the horizon. At first, Joe ignored it. He told himself this was normal. This was the Mafia life. This was what he had signed up for. But then, police pressure increased. Rival families became more violent, and the Genovese bosses themselves became more paranoid. Joe started to feel eyes on him, from the law, from his enemies, and even from his own allies. He once said that living in the Mafia made him feel like he was a prisoner of the system, a servant who couldn't escape even if he wanted to. He was trapped. If he left the Mafia, he would die. If he stayed, he was living in fear. And if police caught him, he'd spend the rest of his life in prison. His loyalty, which once felt like honor, now felt like a chain around his neck. His silence, which once felt like strength, now became a heavy burden. Every decision he made, every step he took, felt like he was walking deeper into a maze with no exit. The streets that once made him feel powerful now made him feel hunted. The family that once gave him purpose now made him doubt whether anyone around him could truly be trusted. Because in the Mafia, loyalty wasn't guaranteed. It was temporary, conditional, and often fake. Joe Valachi, once confident and fearless, began to crumble on the inside, slowly, quietly, the way a mountain cracks long before it collapses. His journey from loyal soldier to a man drowning in fear was the beginning of a transformation no one in the Mafia world could have predicted. This was the start of a story that would one day expose secrets the Mafia had hidden for decades, secrets that Joe himself never imagined he would reveal. Joe Valachi's life was nothing short of a roller coaster, a wild ride filled with money, respect, fear, and constant danger. From the outside, people thought Mafia members lived glamorous lives filled with power. But inside, the truth was completely different. Every day, Joe woke up not knowing whether he would make it back home alive. In the Mafia, the rules were very simple: obey or disappear. If someone broke the rules, if someone threatened the family, if someone spoke too much, the order went out instantly: handle him. This one sentence could end a man's life, and Joe was often the man chosen to handle such situations. He did the dirty work. He cleaned the mess. He handled the problems nobody else wanted to touch. The deeper he went into the mafia world, the harder it became to leave. The more work you did, the more blood you spilled, the more the family owned you. Leaving wasn't an option. Retirement didn't exist. Joe's daily criminal activities were a complete mixture of chaos and precision. His tasks included collecting illegal payments from businesses that were forced to pay the mafia, fighting rival criminal groups whenever turf wars heated up, handling disputes related to drug money, often involving violence, and constantly avoiding undercover cops, who were everywhere during those years. Every single day felt like a mission. There was no peace, no break, no moment to breathe. A normal man might worry about work deadlines or bills. Joe worried about bullets, betrayal, surveillance, and sudden orders that could change his entire life. But the biggest problem, the one that quietly destroyed him from the inside, was the absence of trust. In the mafia, trust was an illusion, a myth, a fantasy. The man you shared drinks with tonight could be the same man stabbing you tomorrow because someone higher up ordered it. Friendship meant nothing. Promises meant nothing. Only fear kept everyone quiet, loyal, and obedient. This lack of trust ate away at Joe like slow poison. Day after day, his mind grew heavier, his nerves weaker. He once said, "In the mafia, the biggest tax you pay is fear. Not money, not loyalty, not violence. Fear. It was the cost of survival." Joe lived in a world where every smile could hide a knife, every handshake could hide betrayal, and every conversation could be the last one he ever had. This constant pressure built up over time. It felt like he was carrying a mountain on his shoulders, surrounded by enemies, surrounded by danger, and surrounded by people who would kill him without a second thought if ordered. Soon, Joe's life reached a breaking point, a place where everything started collapsing at the same time. The police were chasing him, building cases, conducting raids, watching every move he made. The courts were threatening him with long prison sentences, piling up charges that could lock him away forever. And worst of all, the mafia itself began to doubt him. That was the most dangerous threat of all, because once the mafia suspects you, even a little, your life is practically over. No trial, no explanation, just silence followed by a gunshot. Joe found himself trapped between three powerful forces: the law, the justice system, and the very mafia he had served for years. All three were coming after him at once. It was a nightmare with no escape. The same world that had given him money and respect was now ready to destroy him. The same family he once protected was preparing to erase him. The same system he had served so faithfully was now tightening around his neck like a noose. This was the moment Joe realized that fear wasn't just a tax anymore. It was a death sentence. His life had turned into a ticking time bomb, and he could feel it getting closer to exploding every single day. Joe Valachi's life took a dramatic turn when he was finally arrested on a federal crime case. After years of running from the law, years of hiding from rivals, and years of working for the mafia, the inevitable had arrived: prison. But what Joe didn't know was that prison wouldn't be a place of safety. It would become the most dangerous place he had ever been. Inside those walls, Joe soon faced a new, terrifying problem: suspicion within the mafia itself. Suspicion in the mafia wasn't just a warning. It wasn't something you could talk your way out of. Suspicion was the same as a death sentence. And the problem grew even worse because of one man, Vito Genovese, the supreme boss of the Genovese crime family, the same family Joe served for years. Vito Genovese was not just any inmate. He was a legend, feared, respected, brutal when needed. And unfortunately for Joe, Vito was in the same prison. While in jail, Vito heard a rumor circulating in the underworld. Joe Valachi might become an informant. That one sentence was enough to decide Joe's fate. In the mafia, even a small whisper could end a life. It didn't matter if the rumor was true or false. Just the possibility was enough to make the bosses think, "He knows too much. If he talks, we're finished." From that moment onward, Joe knew his days were numbered. Inside prison, The Mafia didn't need guns or street corners. They had influence. They had reach. They had loyal soldiers everywhere, even among inmates, guards, and kitchen workers. Joe slept knowing he could be killed in the dark. He ate knowing his food could be poisoned. He walked the hallways knowing any person passing by could be the hitman sent to silence him forever. The paranoia became overwhelming. Then came the day that changed everything. One afternoon, an inmate Joe had never seen before approached him. The man walked confidently, silently, right toward Joe. In the Mafia world, this could only mean one thing, a pre-planned hit. Joe felt his heart pounding. Every instinct, every fear, every Mafia memory told him, this is it. They sent a killer. Without thinking, without pausing, without questioning, Joe reacted like a man fighting for survival. In pure panic, he attacked the inmate and killed him. Only later, too late, Joe discovered the truth. The man wasn't a hitman. He wasn't even connected to the Mafia. He was completely innocent. Joe had killed the wrong person. That moment shattered him. It didn't just break his heart. It broke his mind. For years he had followed orders. For years he had carried out Mafia jobs. For years he had lived in violence. But never had he killed an innocent man by mistake. This wasn't Mafia justice. This wasn't a mission. This was desperation. This was fear taking control of his life. And worse, this moment made Joe finally see the full picture. The Mafia no longer trusted him. The police already saw him as a dangerous criminal. And his life was now threatened by both sides, law enforcement and the Mafia. He was trapped between two giants, the government and the underworld, both ready to crush him. The Mafia had officially placed him on their invisible but very real death list. Once your name was on that list, there was no coming back, no forgiveness, no second chance. You were a walking corpse, just waiting for the day you'd fall. Joe realized he had no allies left, no protection, no safe corner, no friends to warn him, no family to save him. He was completely alone. This was the breaking point. The exact moment Joe understood that the life he had lived, the loyalty he had given, and the rules he had followed meant nothing now. The Mafia he had served so faithfully was now ready to erase him. The police who wanted justice didn't care about his fear. And prison became a ticking time bomb where every second felt like borrowed time. The killing of the innocent inmate didn't just stain Joe's hands. It opened his eyes. It showed him that fear had finally taken over his life. It pushed him to the edge where a man either breaks, or he decides to fight back in a way no Mafia member ever had before. This moment, this mistake, was a spark that would eventually lead Joe Valachi to make the most shocking decision in Mafia history. One day, Joe Valachi was brought before the United States Senate Investigative Committee, a government panel formed to uncover the truth about organized crime in America. This was not an ordinary meeting. It wasn't a simple hearing. This was the moment the entire country had been waiting for. At that time, a huge question echoed across America. Does a Mafia actually exist? People had heard rumors for decades. Movies talked about it. Newspapers hinted at it. Politicians mentioned shadowy groups controlling cities. But nobody had ever proven it. No one had ever spoken openly. No Mafia member had ever dared to admit anything. The government desperately needed real evidence. Something solid, something undeniable, something that could expose the truth. And Joe Valachi was the only man who had it. After months of living in prison under extreme fear, knowing the Mafia wanted him dead, knowing he could be attacked at any moment, Joe reached a breaking point. He realized he had only two choices: stay silent and die, or tell the truth and live under protection. In the end, survival won. Joe Valachi made a decision that would shake the Mafia world to its core, a decision that no Mafia soldier had ever taken in the last 100 years. He would testify openly against the Mafia in court. This wasn't secret testimony. This wasn't private paperwork. This was a public confession, broadcast on national television, in front of cameras, senators, journalists, and millions of viewers. For the first time in American history, a real made man, a currently active Mafia soldier, sat in a government hearing, and revealed the inner workings of the largest criminal organization in the United States. When Joe took the witness seat, the entire country held its breath. Then he began talking. What he revealed over the next sessions was more explosive than anyone expected. He explained the Mafia's entire structure, how it was organized like a secret army. He described the hierarchy. The boss, the ultimate authority. The underboss, second in command. Capo regimes, capos. Commanders who control crews. Soldiers, the foot soldiers like him. Associates, helpers who worked under the family but weren't officially inducted. Joe explained how power flowed from the top down, how orders were passed, and how disobedience meant instant death. He revealed the Mafia's oath of silence, known as omerta, an unbreakable vow that promised loyalty until death. Once you took this oath, you belonged to the family more than to your own blood. He described a secret initiation ritual, where new members took an oath while a saint's picture burned in their hands, swearing they would burn like the saint if they ever betrayed the family. He spoke about the Mafia's deep involvement in illegal gambling, extortion, drug trafficking, labor union manipulation, construction fraud, protection rackets, and countless hidden businesses that kept money flowing in. Then came the most shocking part. Joe detailed how murder orders were given, how targets were chosen, how executions were performed, and how the family erased the evidence afterward. For decades, the public thought mafia crimes were exaggerated stories. But hearing an actual mafia soldier describe every detail removed all doubt. America was stunned. Newspapers covered the testimony on the front page. Radio hosts discussed every sentence. Television networks broadcast the hearings across the country. The media gave Joe's revelations a dramatic name, the Valachi Papers. These papers became a landmark moment in U.S. history, showing the world the Mafia's hidden skeleton for the first time. And the impact was massive. Joe Valachi's testimony became the foundation for America's modern laws against organized crime. The government finally understood how the Mafia operated, how members communicated, and how their financial networks worked. With this knowledge, they created new strategies, new task forces, and new laws, including the powerful RICO Act that would later destroy multiple crime families. Joe had entered the Mafia as a small soldier, a man who simply followed orders. But he stepped out of the shadows as something entirely different. America's first national Mafia whistleblower. He didn't just expose a crime family. He exposed an entire system. A system that had been hidden for generations. His testimony marked the beginning of the Mafia's decline, and the start of a new chapter in America's fight against organized crime. After giving his testimony, Joe Valachi knew that his life could never return to anything resembling normal. The Mafia would never allow a man like him, someone who had once been deeply trusted within their world, to walk freely after exposing their secrets to the U.S. government. For the mob, betrayal wasn't just a crime, it was a death sentence. And Joe had committed the ultimate betrayal. The U.S. government understood this very clearly. They knew Valachi's testimony had cracked open the inner world of organized crime in America in a way no one before him ever had. For that reason, they offered him lifetime protection, a rare step and one that reflected just how valuable and dangerous he had become. Joe was not simply a witness. He was a living archive of the Mafia's hidden structure, its rules, its rituals, and its crimes. As long as he was alive, he was a threat to them. Inside prison, where the government believed he would be safest, Valachi's life became profoundly quiet, isolated, and unusually spiritual. Cut off from the world he once knew, he turned inward in a way he never had during his years in the mob. He grew closer to religion, searching for meaning in the ruins of his violent past. Prayer became a part of his routine. For the first time, he started thinking deeply about the choices he had made. Loneliness also pushed him toward writing and introspection. With nothing but time and memory, he began to revisit every chapter of his life. His childhood, his entry into the underworld, the murders he committed, the loyalty he gave, and the loyalty he lost. The weight of his past actions finally began to settle on him. In his own words and quiet confessions, Joe repeatedly expressed regret over the bloodshed he had caused. He admitted that the Mafia had not just destroyed the lives of its victims, It had destroyed his life as well. One of his most haunting realizations was spoken in a single, powerful confession. I built the very organization that I later had to betray just to survive. For Joe, this wasn't just guilt. It was irony mixed with tragedy. He had devoted his entire life to the Mafia, believing that loyalty to it was loyalty to a family. But in the end, it was that same family that came for his life, forcing him to turn to the government for protection. In a sense, his only way to live was to destroy the world he had helped create. That realization stayed with him until his last days. Joe Valachi's final years were uneventful, almost forgotten. His name had once shaken the entire Mafia establishment, sending waves through courtrooms, newsrooms, and criminal networks across the country. But the end of his life was a complete opposite. Quiet, nearly invisible. He died in prison, without any family present, without any public attention, and far removed from the world where his name had once mattered. There were no reporters waiting outside, no crowds following the case, no family to grieve him. His death, like many parts of his late life, slipped into silence. And yet, despite this lonely ending, Joe Valachi's influence lived on far beyond the prison walls. For the United States, he had done something unprecedented. He had opened a door into the Mafia that had been sealed shut for decades. Until Valachi, the government struggled to understand how the Italian-American Mafia functioned. They didn't know the hierarchy, the rituals, the rules, or even the basic structure of the so-called families. Every attempt to infiltrate them had failed, mostly because the Mafia operated under a code of silence that was stronger than fear, stronger than loyalty, and at times even stronger than death. But when Joe Valachi spoke, that silence broke. He revealed how members were initiated. He explained the roles of bosses, underbosses, and soldiers. He described secret meetings, murders, betrayals, and the internal politics of organized crime. And most importantly, he showed the government, clearly and publicly, that the Mafia was real, powerful, and deeply rooted in American society. In that sense, Joe Valachi's legacy is not measured by how he lived or how he died, but by what he revealed. His testimony became a turning point in the history of U.S. law enforcement. It helped shape future cases, future strategies, and future takedowns of organized crime. Without Valachi, the path to dismantling the Mafia would have been longer and far more difficult. He may have died quietly, but his impact echoed loudly across American history. Joe Valachi opened a door the government had never been able to open before, and once opened, it could never be closed again.